Hello, and welcome to Let's Talk About Wargames, the podcast where we do that, where we talk about wargames. I'm Jack, and with me here today, as always, is Joe. Hello, Joe.
Hi, Jack. How's it going?
Oh, it's going splendidly.
Perfect. I'm going to choose to take that literally, and I'm glad everything's going wonderfully.
um, yeah, for any future listeners or current listeners, we're still in the pandemic. This is right around the 1 year mark of it starting, and that's doing things to my psyche, I
Oh,
think.
yes.
Yeah, I went into quarantine mode a little bit early, um, actually because funny thing happened. My car broke down, and so for the week before quarantine, I was out buying a new car, and then I bought the new car, and I was about to stop working from home and go into work the next day, and then I found out that my roommate had been exposed to COVID, so I had to stay home, and then quarantine hit the next week, and so I never actually ever ended up commuting with that new car I had to go rush out and buy to commute with.
That's funny in a tragic kind of, desperate comedy kind of way.
I mean, it's a nice car, and I haven't done anything to it. Like, I've barely
Yeah.
had to maintain the thing. I've like
Pristine.
it is pristine. That's right. It's got less than 2,800 miles on it, I think, for the whole year. And
Wow.
that is depressing because I don't go anywhere anymore.
That's funny to talk about, this is basically the 1 year anniversary, right?
It's like next
Getting
week or
close.
so. We're recording this March 4th. So like I think it was around March 10th or
Yeah,
so. So it's like next
because
week.
I went, my quarantine story was my earth shattering academic one where I finally had saved up enough money to do a research trip to the UK to go visit the archives. And I
Oof.
booked that for March 10th, I think, so I could do a conference first on the 11th or 12th. So I got there, I did my conference, I was super happy, went to the archives, managed 3 days of it, and then I got the email from the government of Canada saying everyone needs to come home right now. And
Oh
a
no.
colleague of mine was like, called me at like 1 in the morning in the UK and said, "Hey Joe, you better get a flight now before they all go crazy and you can't find one." So I did, and managed to get out the next day. I only had to pay, God, I paid like $150 to change my flight, and then
Woof.
6 hours later, because he called me like in the morning, and then when I woke up again for real, the prices were in the several hundreds. So I dodged a bullet, and I thank that guy every once in a while for it.
Good lord.
But yeah, quarantine sucks, isn't it?
Yeah. The bright side, I've been wearing sweatpants to work every day, so that's nice. But that could be any time. If I just, I mean, like, I don't know. I think that a lot of people are figuring out right now that we can all just work from home all of the
Mm-hmm.
time. There doesn't need to be any kind of crisis. However, this is not my thought on the cultural, the socioeconomic comings and goings of the Western democracies. This is a podcast about war games. So I will stop talking about how much like being at home and seeing my partner and wearing sweatpants during the workday, and
Well,
instead talk about something more cheery, like colonialism, which is what we're
yeah,
talking about today.
because the one thing we get to do when we stay home all the time is play more games.
Well, I guess. I don't know. I'm too busy to play during the workday, unfortunately. On my break, I'll get a little like, a little bit of Battle Brothers or something in, but
Well, I mean, you're not gonna get up and go for a drive downtown or anything, right? So just stay home and power up a video game.
you make me so sad.
Right. So
uh,
what have we been playing? What did we play that sparked this desire to delve into one of the most
yes.
horrific conversations in gaming?
Yeah, so Age of Empires 3
Mm-hmm.
released the definitive edition, I think a couple months ago. I think it was at the end of last year.
Yeah, about that time.
Um, but that came back out. And Age of Empires 3, for anyone who missed the boat on that one, I know a lot of people just played 2 and then didn't play 3. Or I guess for a younger audience, they probably haven't even played 3 at all. Um, but Age of Empires 3, in contrast to 2, which is like very medieval,
Mm-hmm.
um, 3's focus is more on the Renaissance to Enlightenment periods, but specifically centering around colonialism. So a lot of the games is conceptually like you sending out some settlers to build up a town or whatever in the quote unquote New World,
Mm-hmm.
and you have shipments from your home city to help you colonize the place better is basically the entire thinking behind the game.
Yeah, it's a very colonial focused game. Like you're not playing any battles in Europe or anything, right? The
I think they
maps
might
are
have
all
added some maps now, but I don't think that they were definitely weren't there when the game was launched
in
initially.
2005 now.
Yeah, no, it's like
hmm
2005 or 2006. It was a long time ago.
hmm
Oh boy,
But yeah,
I'm
and
so old.
so part of the thing that got me interested in the Definitive Edition, well, I've been playing Age of Empires games forever. I played the Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition, and just to get this out of the way, yes, it's not a war game in the conflict simulation sense, but this is a game about war, and we said in the very beginning we're going to cover these too. So here we are.
Yeah, so if you have any complaints, direct them directly to your trash can.
We preempted this. We thought of this from the start.
Yeah, we're talking about strategy games too. Look out, but you know, mostly war
Yes.
games.
So, anyways, I played a lot of the two. Played a lot of 2 Definitive Edition. I've played 1 Definitive Edition too, which isn't super great. But
Sorry.
3 came out, and they said they were doing some changes to fix some of the issues that the game had with portrayals of Native Americans. And I thought, great, because it needed it. Because
Yeah,
if you go
it
back and
wasn't
play the
great.
game, it's got some pretty horrendous stuff in it. So I thought, all right, if they're doing this, this is a good sign. This is a step in the right direction. But I know, and of course, when they announced that, when people were talking about, it, you see the usual complaints that they're ruining something, or it's SJW is going wild, or all this other nonsense, and I don't abide by that because reassessing things is good. Reassessing things with new information is part of how we should be doing things. So
Right.
great. The remakers of Age of Empires 3 decided to take a nice hard look at what kind of image and what kind of world the old game was making and change it to be better. Bam, they failed. Okay? They did. All right, this is probably my most controversial statement I'm going to make about this kind of stuff ever, but
Go
they
for it, Joe. Lay
they
it down.
half-assed this to the point that it makes me upset. They said they were going to go back and fix these things and look at the historiography, look at the images they're portraying in their game, and they did it kinda in like 3 places. And the rest of it, they either didn't touch it or they obfuscated the history in their attempt to make things sound nicer, and that bothers me a lot. So there. That's my big statement. I'm bothered.
You're off the podcast. Get out of here. Turn in your badge and gun.
Right.
Yeah.
So, how are we going to
I,
break this down? Because I want to.
there's a lot of thoughts going into this. I want to point out, first of all, I enjoy not Hearts of Iron. What am I talking about? That's the wrong game. I enjoy Age of Empires 3. However,
I mean, I like it too. I'm still playing it. I'm playing with some
oh
friends.
yeah,
We're going
no,
back through, and I'm enjoying it because it's actually a good strategy game, and you don't get too many good RTSs these days.
yeah, it
But
is what the kids would call problematic.
yeah,
Uh,
and like more so because of the things they fixed. Is that where I'm at? I think I might be where I'm at
Yeah,
with this.
we discussed part of this, and I know that you probably have seen in the game more of it than I have because genuinely, because you and I played this together a few weeks
hmm
ago. I haven't played it much since then. A couple matches here and there, so I probably missed a few things. But even then, I've noticed things that weren't there in the original. Like to be honest, I haven't played the original for like 13 years or whatever because it's been so long. But
hmm
even then, I noticed things. I was like, the way that they went about changing things is very uh strange, and it's in the I guess our thesis of this is they tried to make they've tried to make colonialism PG, and that isn't good.
Yes, that's my problem. That's my problem
uh,
because they did some things that were good, but it doesn't work.
yeah, because they're trying to, I suppose it's not fitting in the tone of what they're trying to do, because if they were trying to PG up like a colonialism for the game that it wasn't focused on it, I guess that would be one thing, but the focus of the game is colonialism, and they're kind of pushing that under the rug, and that's the problem.
Yeah. So first, like let's I'm giving credit where it's due. Let's go over what they did right because they did do some
Okay.
things right, and I do appreciate that they did this. They made it a focus that they were going to go back to how the game portrays the native inhabitants of North and South America and reevaluate that. And that's good because the game
Yes.
launched 2005. You could only play as European civilizations. and the native peoples were these passive elements that existed on the map for you to harvest. Right?
Yeah, to like exploit basically.
They had little camps. You put a building there, and then you could get their troops and get their bonuses. Right?
And I don't think we need an explanation of why that is bad.
Yes, that is not great. Just right off the top, guys.
From a game design standpoint, it's understandable, but from a standpoint of them trying to show the history of this, it's really bad.
Because of course we all know that that was not the case. The original inhabitants of North America were not passive, observers to the
Yeah, waiting
Europeans
for
doing things.
Europeans to come and place a shack down on their tribe and be like, "Oh, yeah, we're gonna go fight for you now," or whatever.
Yeah, they were active state and individual actors that actually contributed to how this grand thing came together. So, right after they had an expansion pack called the War Chiefs, which added 3 new civilizations and a couple campaigns that were entirely based on Native American peoples. So there was, as the game called them, we have the Iroquois, the Aztec, and what was the other one?
I don't remember.
They're
Let me
Lakota
look
now,
it up.
but I don't know what they were called in the original. So that gets into it. And they tried to make these civs different gameplay wise from the Europeans by basically like adding magical elements to them
It was the
because
Sioux.
the Sioux, okay. Yeah, and you can have this building you place down and you send people to work on it and they dance and that gives their soldiers magical powers and like all this
What?
kind of stuff that is just
I didn't play the expansions. What?
yeah. No, yeah. They did war dances and then you could like give an upgrade to different parts of the civ. That mechanically
Um.
is still there, but they replaced it with something a lot less stupid.
Uh. The, to quote my Japanese animes, Nani?
Yes, exactly. So I
What?
mean, yeah, they made them magical.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
And that's a problem, clearly, as as your baffled response is indicating. So they said they're going to fix that, and part of doing that was that the Age of Empires DE team hired a Rosebud Sioux, Anthony Brave, Sikangu Oyate, a Rosebud Sioux tribe, and Chippewa Cree descendant to work as a writer on that game to fix it.
And that's where we get the definitive edition from,
Yes, that's
right?
the
It was his
definition
work.
hired him to work on the Native American civs to make them less cringy. That's great. That's fine. That's exactly what should be happening, right?
Hmm.
So he was their cultural consultant. He reviewed what was in Age of Empires 3, what was in the War Chief expansion, offered um, cultural and historical changes to the team, who then went about trying to craft gameplay stuff around what he offered them. That's great, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's fine. That was awesome. They went through, they renamed the tribes or the Native American civs what they call themselves. So they call them the Sioux is now Lakota because
Hmm.
Lakota is what that group of people broadly call themselves. I guess Sioux was a pejorative term.
Yeah.
And the Iroquois Confederacy is now the Haudenosaunee, which is great. But the Aztec are still the Aztec, which I don't think
That's
really works.
fair enough,
Shouldn't they be the
I suppose.
Mexica? Mexica?
Mexico, I think, would
Yeah.
be more accurate. However, I think given the time span, it's kind of an acceptable thing.
Hmm.
Kind of. It's more sensical than calling a broad group of people like the Sioux or the Iroquois
Hmm.
in this case.
So I appreciate that they did that, and he went through with them, and they changed it so now they don't dance around the frickin' you know tribe with there was like skulls on spikes and crap in that, so they
Oh
got rid
my
of all
God,
that.
really?
Yeah, now they
Ugh.
it's a tribal council and it's strategizing and that gives bonuses to different parts of the because it's like pushing the society to do different things as the council decides.
Well, that's good.
Yes, that's great. They changed it so they're not mining anymore because apparently mining was something that never really happened. So
Yeah.
now you set up a trade post next to the mining resource. You still drain the resource, so it still functions the same way gameplay wise, but it makes more sense now. with how it's
Hmm.
supposed to be. They also went through and redid the campaign, and I can't really talk about that because I never played the campaigns. I only played skirmishes and played multiplayer
I
back
did
then.
a little bit of looking into that because I didn't play the original campaign either. But basically, they replaced some characters that were real life figures with made up ones, so
Okay.
that way it wasn't as like, because I think the specific one was like, oh yeah, we had a Crazy Horse as a character in it that did some, I think it was just like messed up stuff.
No.
So they replaced him with a not real guy,
Okay.
which I
So.
think for the purposes of making Age of Empires 3 less offensive overall, it's, it's
Mhm.
good. Yeah.
But see that'll lead into one of my complaints later on, because they did that and that's all great. But if we're going to continue on to this redoing the game, there was another expansion that added East Asia and South Asia to Age of Empires, and it added the Chinese, Japanese, and India as civs. And as far as I can tell, literally nothing was done to fix any of that,
I don't think anything was.
and that's one of my big problems. Here's my half-assing comment: they hired this guy, and they fixed this. That's good. They completely abandoned everything else in the game. They did not address any of the racism and stereotypes that they've heaped upon the East Asian civs, and that's just been left to the wolves basically. Like if you play as the Chinese, you still have like Shaolin monks running around and kung fu fighting people. I mean, every other European civ has rational military units. You can like hire animals because you know the mystical Orient and stuff. And I did go back and play some of the Japanese campaign, and they're using real figures there and making them sound like terrible people. So like, I I I wish they had done this correctly. I wish
Who
they had
was
done it the whole way.
featured in the Japanese campaign?
You're
I'm curious.
playing. It's a weird ahistorical thing where you're playing as Tokugawa Ieyasu's one of his generals, but you're like invading Kyoto immediately upon the death of Toyotomi Hideyoshi, which didn't happen. Like the first mission is attacking Osaka Castle, which didn't happen until 1615.
Huh.
Yeah, so I mean
Well,
that's I don't get it. I don't get why they did this and they fixed these two civs, but then they completely just abandoned the rest of it. Like why was this the only thing that was an issue? Because there's a lot of issues here, and how we're orientalizing these East Asian civs and the South Asian civs is just as unpleasant as what they were doing with the Native American civs in the first edition of the game.
yeah, it's not great. I did see an interesting thing, I guess, kind of related to this on the Age of Empires wiki that pointed out a specific thing that with the Japanese villager units,
Hmm.
the female settler apparently uses an accent that is died out and is only used in theatrical purposes now,
Okay.
as opposed to the male one that just talks normally. It's kind of strange.
Yeah, I never noticed that. But I mean, I have a problem understanding any villager or people speaking in Age of Empires. I don't know about you.
Well, even the English ones don't speak like English. They speak weird, like 1500s English.
Mm.
I think a lot of what they say doesn't sound anything like recognizable. It sounds like German or whatever. Which, to be fair, I guess kind of kind of is.
Um,
It's not legible to me, is what I'm saying basically.
hmm. So yeah, like I had been excited that they were doing this fix and going through and demysticizing the non-European civilizations, and I was sad to see that they didn't follow through with that in East Asia. That was a big complaint of mine. Or South
Yeah.
Asia. I mean, the Indian stuff's just as bad, but like the campaigns are nonsensical still. The Chinese campaign, you're a Qing person, like a Manchu, but you're doing the like the Ming exploration ship thing. I don't know. It's
Hmm.
not right.
I think I remember hearing about that one. Is like the idea is you're like a dude who happens upon the west coast of the U.S. Like you end up in California.
I gotta go back and play these campaigns all the way.
I didn't play it, but I remember that's like the gist of it.
So we can get into that terrible book that's been roundly disproven. Was it 14 92 or something. No,
I'm not
1420
familiar with
something.
it.
There's a pop history book that says China discovered North America first. I have it on my shelf actually because I found it in a bin for $1, and I wanted to see what he was saying. But it's been roundly decried as just not real.
Interesting. I've heard claims that the Romans found it, and or the ancient Egyptians, and I don't know how much credence I can give to any of that, but that sounds more reasonable, I suppose, than the the main.
Yeah, it's 1434, the year magnificent Chinese fleet sailed to Italy and ignited the Renaissance. Wait, what? I don't think I have that book. Oh, it's 1421 was the one where he discovers America. I don't know about this, but yeah, I haven't played that campaign, so I can't know what they're saying. I know that 1421 is the year China discovered the world. Yes, that's the book. No, they didn't discover America though. They
That
they went
sounds.
to
I
the
mean, they
Qing
went to
fleets.
Southeast Asia, yeah,
Yeah, with Southeast
but
Asia, they went to India and they went down to Africa even. So they went pretty far, but they didn't go that way.
yeah. Ugh. Well, I guess fans of ancient China aside, a little strange.
Mm,
But
right.
there's other issues with the game as well in terms of colonialism and whitewashing things.
Yeah.
Maybe that wasn't the best word to use. I think I've accidentally made a pun. But
Right.
for
Right.
example, they went ahead and in the game there is a building that you can build as one of the European powers that you have just people build and then they go to it and work it to just generate money. And the original game was called a plantation. Um, Obviously, having connotations of like this is where slaves work, because that's what that is. But in this game, they renamed it to Estate,
Mm-hmm.
which feels like they're just trying to cover up the fact that because at no point in the game, to my understanding, do they mention slavery exists like at all.
No.
I don't think that there is a single mention of like slavery, Africa, black people existing in the game, like period. And it's like, are we just ignoring that happened?
Yeah. As far as I can tell, the entire continent does not exist in Age of Empires 3. It's
And like, I don't
yeah.
know if this was not a game about colonialism, that would be one thing. But it is a game like, yes, colonialism. That time where we didn't do anything to anyone,
A bunch of brave Europeans went and found a bunch of empty places where they could build these trading
where there was
posts.
no one there.
Yeah, and then they of course started up very profitable industries of cotton estate building and made tons of money, and everyone was happy.
Who worked on those estates? Paid white people. Don't worry about
Yep, you buy them for 100 food, so you're paying for them.
it.
But yeah, I mean that there's that, and then they renamed the ages to the from discovery to exploration age, which I'm okay with that one because okay,
That's fine.
then colonialism to commerce age, and that is less okay change for me because that is again doing the same thing where it's hiding the nature of the game that you're playing, and it feels like it's harmful in the long run. It feels like the kind of thing that we shouldn't be ignoring for the sake of being able to play a game without feeling bad, right? Like you can still play these games and not consider yourself an asshole, but you have to at least understand what you're playing and what you're doing. If you're playing a game about colonialism, it's not a great thing for the people who are suffering because of colonialism. That's the nature of the game. The
Yeah, you're the
same,
bad guy.
yeah,
Sorry.
and that's like it's okay to
That's
play the
fine.
bad guy, but it's the same thing with we're talking about the in our Nazi episode where we talk about playing games with Nazis in it. You can do that. No one's going to stop you, but it's important to understand what it is you're doing, right? It's important to understand if you want to build a division of SS Panzer Grenadiers or whatever, that you understand actually what they are. At least understand what they are. Like yeah, and the fact that this game is just trying to hide that in favor of being less unpleasant makes it worse in my opinion. Because I had a lot of problems with the how the old game portrayed the world and held them. And Evil One does the same kind of thing too. Like it still has some pretty raunchy topics, but the fact that they're going through scrubbing one very visible part of it, which is overall a good thing, and then leaving the rest of it and just kind of slapping some new paint on it and saying, "Look, it's not bad. It's exploration and whatnot. And we're not talking about colonialism, so it's okay." That doesn't make it better. This game is still about colonialism. Like you succeed the best when you exploit the world the best. Now that's most RTSs, but that's still the nature of the game, right? And you can't separate those two.
Yeah, well, especially because they make it so plain. Like, ah, yes, you are coming here and exploiting the native peoples. Like, you can't get around it.
No, like if you play a long game, you know, we're going back and forth. By the end of it, the freaking map is empty. The trees are gone. There's some buildings. The animals are gone.
Yeah,
Like you're exploiting the world. That's what RTSs do. But then to say, oh no, everyone was cool with this, just doesn't
yeah.
work.
Well, they're saving that for the very definitive edition to be released in 10 years.
But like, am I crazy? Because I feel like I don't want to come across as, you know, like a screaming sociopathic Nazi guy. It's like, how dare they PC my game? But I'm
Well,
also not comfortable with the changes they've made because of what it means for the game's representation of this issue, and the fact that they started doing the right thing and then stopped.
yeah, that's what feels weird about it. If they hadn't made any changes to the Native American stuff, I feel like it would probably feel overall less bad because they like in changing the negative depictions of Native American tribes, which is great, by the way. I want to say it is great that they did that. In changing that, they acknowledged that there are bad things that are in the game and that there are negative or harmful or whatever you want to put it, like things that snuck in there because it's colonialism and it's dirty and it's bad, but they didn't do anything with the rest of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so by the act of acknowledging that it existed and then not fixing all of it, it is kind of um it's not great, Joe.
Yeah, like I feel bad because I don't want to say that they did wrong by making these changes because I appreciate that they did, but they just needed to keep doing it,
Yeah, keep going.
right? Keep like I don't think we should have a kung fu monk as a military unit in the Chinese faction because guess what they had, and they tease at it like they know that you have the different banner armies, you have the Manchu military hierarchy that they're pulling on because you know you have Kangxi the emperor, that's the one of the longest lived Qing emperors. Like it's they were in the right place, but then they added freaking kung fu monks because China, and that's bad, right? And they didn't fix any of that. So it's just
Yeah,
it's maybe they will go back and do it, but I kind of doubt it, honestly.
like I mentioned, the very definitive edition.
Right. The super ultra mega definitive edition.
Definitiver.
Yeah. But then I guess that gets into ideas of colonialism and gaming in general and, you know, war games and strategy games and games that deal with these horrendous topics because, you know, I would if you would have asked me a year ago if Age of Empires 3 would have a definitive edition, I would probably say no because the subject matter doesn't get made into games anymore, right? You don't see too many colonial games these days because they're dealing with really rough subjects that people don't want to touch because it's you know, dangerous to
Yeah.
profitability at least.
So let's talk a bit more about colonialism in games
Mhm.
that are current.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the topic comes up a lot in board games, and
Hmm.
that's I think a good place to start because and you know, not because of this video, but it's nice to see that this came out. I think a week before we started recording this. Is no pun intended a YouTube channel that does board game reviews released a pretty good video about colonialism and board games, where the host Efka just talked a bit about colonialism as a topic in post-colonialism studies as something that we can and should be trying to apply to board games, and talked about through the lens of Lithuanian um, Lithuania's colonial history. Like it's the amount of times that different powers have overrun Eastern Europe and tried to reorganize things and what that does to the people who are sitting there. And that's his familial lived experience. That's where he gets to talk from that perspective. But it raised some interesting points about how we treat these ideas of colonialism in games and how the settings settings and mechanics can be colonial or not, if that makes sense. So a game like
Right.
Catan, which everyone's played Catan, right? You build, you get resources, you build little houses, put roads down.
Yeah.
You play Catan, right?
Relatively inoffensive. Yeah.
Yeah, but the subject matter is still the subject matter, and the mechanics are still very colonial, right? Because you're still
Sure.
going to a place and you're still taking that place over and then stripping it of resources and building your own thing there. Now, Catan, Catan's done subtle things over the past to avoid that. Like they've dropped the settlers in from their name. Now they're just Catan. Used to be the settlers of Catan, which I thought was kind of fun. And there's zero mention of anyone living. Right, you're going to an empty island, which makes it nicer.
Yeah, it's fine. It's like if there's no one there, there's no one there.
Yeah, and that's the thing. But I mean, people will, and there are several articles floating around about the colonial nature of Catan as a just the structures of it, right? So it's part of the discussion, even though I'm with you in on the sense of personally, I don't care if there's no people there.
I mean, yeah, there's something to be said about I I suppose when you playing in Catan, you're playing as what's equivalent to like one of the trading companies, or your Jamestown charters or whatever that like go to a place and colonize the thing. You're playing as one of those. It's just that no one's there. So
Hmm.
it's like I mean, like it's fake. It's made up world or whatever. It's just a little bit. If I were someone who was colonialism focus, if that was my big thing, I would probably have more things to take umbrage with. But to be honest, like it's Catan,
Hmm. Um, there is an article that I will have to go back and read, something that was brought to my attention recently called "Post-Colonial Catan." I'm trying to find the author's name. Bruno Faduti, where he goes through. This is like 2017, where he goes through and discusses just the nature. So if you're interested in this side of it, you should go check out Post Colonial Catan by Bruno Faduti, and that would be the piece to start with, because this is not where Jack and I
no,
excel, but this person wrote a nice article about it. All right, but that leads into like games that are clearly have a colonial is point of view and either don't acknowledge it or kind of hand wave the colonialism. Now, I was looking at like board war games that do this, and board war games tend to avoid this purely by dint of focusing, right?
sure,
Board war games that are taking place in colonial conflicts tend to focus down on a microscopic of like a battle or a campaign and sidestep the issue entirely. Or they talk about it. They say this is what is going on, here's the battle you're fighting. Go.
yeah,
So the issue is more in these insidious games that have the mechanics in place that bring a very colonialist mindset, but don't talk about it. And that's the same crusade I'm now waging against Age of Empires, is that you're dealing with something horrifying, you can't ignore it. So like, have you played Puerto Rico?
I have
That's a
not.
good one to talk about. The Puerto Rico game, it's a classic. It's a good game. It's a worker placement game. Now I'm looking up the specifics of when it came out because that's important. But this one came out back in 2002, and I played it a bunch. It's a good game. You are basically building up a colony in Puerto Rico by grabbing workers, putting the workers to do different things, getting their resources, then translating that into currency, which then goes into buildings, which then builds up the colony in something pretty. But right off the top, the workers, which are called workers, are brought in. They're little brown cubes that you bring in from
Uh oh.
overseas.
Uh oh.
Yes, yes, this is not great because guess what? They're slaves, and they're just not acknowledged. I've heard some people trying to defend this because like you use your same workers for everything, so eventually you'll be like putting workers in buildings to do things, and like one of those buildings is a university or whatever. But no, guys, the central core conceit of this game is bringing slaves in from overseas to then work your fields to make your colony stronger. And I
Well,
would be okay with that if the game called it that. So there's my stance. If the game is you are a freaking colonialist and you're a slave owner and you're using slaves to make your shit, that's what this game is. It's bad and you're the bad guy, but it's not hiding this horrendous part of the actual colonial past of Europeans in Central America, right?
yeah, that's not so great.
No, it's not. And that's like that's my problem as someone who comes at this stuff from a historical writing point of view, right? Is that these everything has meaning. There's my artsy fartsy academic thing for the day. Everything means things.
Well put.
Uh, yep. And if you're playing a game about this, you can't ignore it, right?
Yeah, it's important to acknowledge, especially considering, well, to be frank, especially considering how much education in the world wants to ignore all this stuff now. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, let's. I'm go. Here's my PSA. Here's my. I'm gonna take a knee in front of the camera and have a heart to heart moment. Um, Sorry, media has a responsibility to show things accurately now because a lot of schools and media are purposely distributing misinformation to create their own narrative. That is my hot take. Like you gotta be able to share things accurately because
Mm-hmm.
people are being lied to or misled or not informed at all. And unfortunately, if you're going to be making a fun game or piece of media for people to consume, you gotta like tell people the real facts, even if that's not what the point of the game is. Say like, hey, this is the made up part or whatever, because boy, it's not great.
Yeah, and part of my the reason I think it's good to bring this up and talk about this is because this is getting wrapped up in that wider idea of liberals ruining things or canceling games or
The
whatever the hell,
cancel
right?
culture of games, yes.
Yes, because this keeps getting brought up every time someone talks about this kind of stuff. Is that this is like in the Age of Empires case? I saw plenty of reviews on Steam being angry that they dared to change something because they were PC cancel culturing stuff. And no, you don't have to be like
We're,
that.
we're not canceling. We're not
But
canceling Age of Empires 3. We're just criticizing it.
no, I played it like last
Yeah,
night.
I
Yeah,
think I think the problem is with these people is they hear two c words and they think they mean the same thing, and so
it's yeah. So like, I don't want to cancel games that do this. I want them to own up and talk about the reason they're doing this. And when games do get shut down because of the subject matter not being treated correctly, and because no one want to publish that, that's not a game getting canceled. That's publishers realizing that the game isn't treating the subject matter correctly, right?
yeah.
So the big one for me in a board wargaming world and someone who owns several GMT titles, there was a game a
Is it
while
Victoria
ago.
2?
No,
Oh,
no,
oh, Victoria Cross
we are going
2.
to get to
Sorry.
that. Victoria Cross 2. No, Victoria Cross 2 is fine. That's from Worthington Games, by the way. And although they're very much doing a Hollywood version of the Victoria Cross 2 is about the Battle of Islamanda and the Battle of Rorke's Drift in
Hmm.
the Anglo-Zulu War, and it's very much a Hollywood interpretation, right? You have your lines of redcoats, you're throwing buckets of dice, you have your Zulu warriors running around and being good at close combat. It's a it's a fun little game. It's silly, but it's meant to be playing the Zulu film with
Yeah,
Batman's
Michael
butler.
Caine is there.
That's him. That's the one.
Here's a fun
um,
one. Did you know that if you say bacon in Michael Caine's accent, you're also saying beer cannon in a Jamaican accent?
I
Beer
didn't,
can.
but
I'll cut that one out.
yes,
I'll cut that one out.
this is the content we're coming here for. No, but this GMT canceled a board game a few years ago called Scramble for Africa because it was a game that depicted European colonial powers scrambling for Africa that did the 1880s to 19 teens or so to get the most resources.
Arguably later.
And it, yes, yeah, yeah, okay, the period of the scramble, yeah, we
Yeah.
can go a bit longer, but
The scramble
generally
itself,
into
yeah.
the
Not African
Mhm.
colonialism, just the
No,
scramble.
because that's a bit of a
Yeah.
longer thing. Yeah. And the game basically did not acknowledge colonialism at all. The Africans basically weren't there.
It was just let's
And
take X chunk of land, was it?
yeah, you're sending meeples in to gather land to be able to get resources to send it back, and you're competing with other European powers to do it. And you're laying down tiles to like explore a unknown Africa as you do so.
As
And
your guys are all like saying, "Oh, good thing no one lives here."
basically, you were going to be participating in what would be under the surface the genocidal parts of colonialism without even acknowledging it, right? But the game was um, advertised as this grand colonial adventure. There's a picture of what's this? Where's that picture?
Leopold?
There he is. No, it's a fictional character, Flashman.
Flashman.
Yes. Have you ever read any of those?
No, I have not.
Oh, they're very tongue-in-cheek adventure stories of a Victorian military officer who is just the absolute worst human being, but happens to always end up in the to get an award or be at a critical battle to come out as a hero, even though he's like a cheat and then a backstabber and a
Oh,
atrocious person.
oh, Pith Helmetman.
Yes, I've read a few of them. They're silly, but they're fun, silly books, and they're very tongue in cheek about European colonialism. um, like on my shelf, I have Flashman and the Tiger, where he goes and boinks the Dowager Empress of China before participating in the Second Opium War.
Hooray!
Yeah, but of course he's a terrible person, and the author is very clear about the atrocious nature of the British, so the Second Opium War. So like, I mean, I don't know how you want to read that, but it seems like it was on the up and up because of how shitty everyone is. But again, I'm not a major. I don't know anything about the author. Maybe he's a ardent British nationalist. I don't freaking know.
Well, let's hope not.
Let's hope not. But anyways, yeah. So they used a picture of Flashman for this game because they're trying to evoke that that glorious age of Hollywood movies where people have pinned helmets and go into Africa with their pipes and their mustaches and their guns and they
And their
shoot
racism.
things. Yes. So people complained because the game wasn't showing the reality of what they were doing, and GMT responded by saying, "Okay, you're right. We'll take this down because this doesn't. We don't want to publish this if it's
Right.
going to do this." And they talked to the designer first, and they all came to an agreement and they got rid of it. People lost their minds because how dare they censor this game? But no, right? It's fine if the publisher doesn't want any part of this, and if people raise legitimate concerns about what the game's covering, and that's the natural result. It gets canceled, right? Because the idea that you'd have a game where you're just running around Africa and taking things out, considering the horrific ramifications of what you're doing, shouldn't be something that people are playing willy nilly, right?
Yeah.
Um, One more board game that I want to mention. I think it's called Age of Sail.
Oh, not Imperial Struggle?
No, not Imperial Struggle. Okay, I can talk Imperial Struggle first because I forgot the name of this game and I didn't write it down like an idiot. So Imperial Struggle. I like Imperial Struggle. I think it's a good game. I think they did a good job, and I like the way they portray colonialism in that game because they tell you what's happening. There's a space you can. There's a slave trading space that if you own, you get you more resources because guess what? It was profitable. But also, that game is setting you as the player to look at the world from the very specific eyes of British or French leadership in that century. And anything and everything is a tool to be used. That includes the European states, because you can do just as much diplomatic bullshit in Europe as you can in North and South America and in India in that game. So the way they do that, the way they portray it in that game is that you, as these two powers, are using the whole world as playthings to get your own way. And that's fine because that's kind of how you saw things, right? That's kind of how they operated. They would just as easily throw an Italian under the bus as they would Caribbean native.
I'm sure someone's gonna make a very good Sopranos meme out of this.
But that's how the game portrays it. And if you look at the previous game, which is Twilight Struggle, one of the most popular games in top 10 or top 50 lists of war games ever, it does the same thing with the Americans and the Soviet Union. And it's still a colonial setting, right? You still have the U.S. and the USSR as colonial powers, using the entire world to get their outcome and viewing the world through the very specific lens of the U.S. and USSR leadership.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. I would say more of a new imperialist angle than colonialist, but I mean,
yeah, it's
let,
still
let us not let
imperialism.
us not bandy about the words too much. Imperialism is basically another facet of colonialism. They're hand in hand.
Yes. So I would consider what the U.S. and the USSR did in the Cold War period to be colonialism, just with
Colonialism
less
too.
mustaches. Yes.
The Soviets had a lot of mustaches,
Okay, fine. I'll find
less
another.
less pith helmets.
Sure. Although they should have kept those. Those are cool.
Speaking of which, I don't know, a little tangential. For some reason, every time I see one of these pith helmet men, I always hear Brian Blessed's voice in my head.
I mean, he's got the voice for it.
He does have the voice for it. Nothing against Brian Blessed, but I think it's that I saw him in Tarzan at that formative age, and it's just every single time there has been a dickbag European in anything, I'm just like, that's Brian Blessed. I'm sorry,
I
Brian
mean,
Blessed, if you're listening to this.
He plays the role well, right? That's one of
Oh no, he
his things,
does.
right?
He's very good at it. He's very good at shouting.
Yeah. So where were we?
We talk
Colonialism,
cool.
Imperial Struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I don't find Imperial Struggle to be bad, in the sense that some of these other games are in their representations of colonialism. Because even though the game doesn't say, we're this is like about colonialism, it's pretty evident from what you're doing and from the text on the cards that you are ruining the native inhabitants as quickly and as efficiently as you can to get what you want, and you are doing this anywhere and everywhere you can. It gives you an edge. So it's just about the scummiest types doing the scummiest things to everyone else to get ahead. That makes it okay to me. And the same thing with Twilight Struggle, right? You're not supporting democracy in Poland because it's the right thing to do. You're doing it because it fucks the Soviets over,
Yeah.
right? And that's one of the reasons why I'm okay with those games' portrayals, because they're not pulling any punches with the real politic nature of the game you're playing.
Right.
Um, I can't find this Age of Sail game. It's the key component is that there's a slavery deck, and if you want to, you can participate in slavery, and it's profitable, but it's also a shitty thing to do, and other players can take you out for it. And the game has this part in the rulebook that says, this is what the slavery was in this period and this time, and this is why it's bad, and that's okay. Like that's like the bare minimum, you know. Include these things, talk about them in your rulebook, and at least don't hide them or don't ignore them. Don't just have like a trading deck where you're going from Africa to the New World and back and you're fine, right? Like they labeled it, it's a slavery deck. You're trading in people. You're a bad person because of it. And here's our explanation in the book as to why this is bad. Like to me, that's okay. I don't know if you feel the same way or not.
The player character is bad. We're not saying that if you play is that into the game.
Yes, because that's what we
Yeah.
said earlier.
I
That
want
you
to
can play
make that
whatever.
clear because I did hear a little bit of a kerfuffle about this, about the German episode. Someone was like, "What, do you think it's bad?" I was like, "No, no, we definitely don't think it's bad if you're playing this game and then you do this, as long as you're not like actually a fan."
Yeah, yeah. I mean, God, I've said this last time. I've got Germans on my shelf over here that I painted up from World War II because, well, I mean, no one at the club had done Germans yet, so I needed to do the bad guy so someone could have someone to shoot. But like, I don't feel like I'm not a Nazi because I've painted German 20 millimeter miniatures.
Gonna get a shirt that says, I'm getting a lot of questions about my shirt that says I'm not a Nazi because I have these German World War II figures that is already answered by the shirt.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
I guess we're treading on tricky ground, right? Because like
yeah.
obviously I'm not saying that I'm not advocating that you're a bad person for playing things that are objectively bad in a board game. It's only bad if you deny those things are bad and or don't care that they're bad. Do the bad thing, but just acknowledge it's a bad thing,
Yeah.
or at least internally. Don't be like
It's fun to be a
play the
master of these
card and
games.
say I'm doing the bad thing, but just acknowledge it to yourself. Be real to yourself.
Oh man, I'm just picturing someone at a board game night just playing the slavery card and just apologizing to everyone else at the table.
Yeah, God, I don't want that. You know, like you know
Oh,
what I'm
that's
saying.
so awkward.
Uh, it's so
I
hard to
kind of
get
want
this
to watch
across.
this happen though, but everyone's quarantined, so it won't.
Yeah.
We're gonna get a message from someone a few months from now after everyone's vaccinated up, and then it's gonna be like, "You ruined my board game night because I had to apologize for playing the slavery card."
Yeah, God, I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like, that's the facetious endpoint of this thing I'm talking about. Like, I don't want everyone to be playing a game that, like, here's the solemn moment where everyone at the gaming club gathers around and takes the lid off the box of Colonial and lays it out, and then says 15 prayers to the deceased and the
Oh
people they're
boy.
about to kill, and then play the game while profusely flagellating themselves with a whip because they're playing a bad thing. Because obviously, fucking not. Right? Like,
Yeah.
I've got a game on my shelf called Colonial, also by GMT, and it's a guess what? It's about colonialism. it's
Oh shit, really?
You play as unnamed European powers, and you literally run around trying to capture and exploit places to get the most points by the end of the game. And it's a fucking good game. We've played it at like 4 and 5 and 6 players. We all have a hell of a time just beating the ever loving shit out of each other while we colonize the world. And that game, again, doesn't hide what you're doing because if you know, the resources all have little icons on them, and the resource in West Africa is manacles because it's people.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're able to set up trade there and set up trade in America somewhere, America or Brazil, you get a bonus for doing the triangle trade. But then later on in the game, the first person to reach the highest point of economic advancement, the game bans slavery. So if you keep doing it, you rack up all these negative points that other players can use to mess with you. So it's trying to get that history of the rising slave trade and the falling slave trade in the 19th century. Also in that game, when you conquer a place, the checklist of things you do is like, are you going to violently suppress the local inhabitants? And if you don't, there's some potential for rebellion. If you do, you get more resources, but they get really upset at you. So like it has all the things there. It's not there's no big booklet saying, oh, this is bad. I guess it was probably just kind of presumed that it's bad.
I
But
mean,
it's still a good
yeah.
game. It's an entertaining game, and it's I think a good game to look at the expansion of European powers and how they're basically the whole world is a pile of toys and opportunities for these people, these colonialist forces to use to try and get one over on each other. And I think that's a statement in of itself.
Yeah, I'm reminded actually by us talking about this of there's in certain, I suppose, like leftist circles. I've heard this was a problem with DSA specifically. That's the Democratic Socialists of America, where at some meetings they'll just have someone go up and say, like, before we start, I'd like to acknowledge the fact that this land was taken from Native Americans, and it's like, yeah, but
No,
apparently it's such a thing that like it detracts from the conversation at hand that people want to just kind of one up each other with it. And what we're saying specifically is don't do that.
no, I mean I don't have a personal problem with that because like my university, University of Calgary, does that every time we have a conference on. We acknowledge that this is the land that belongs to whichever tribe is whatever part of the city we're having the conference in. I don't see it as like
Sure.
a one-upmanship. I mean, I guess
In
it could
some
be almost
circles, it
like
can't be one-upmanship. That's
yeah.
where I'm kind of coming from it.
Here, the
In that.
institutionalized thing kind of feels like a nod. Like I don't know how legitimate it is.
I can tell you that established universities here, for the most part, unless I haven't been paying attention, don't do that.
Okay.
This is more of a political thing.
Nah. Yeah. I mean, I appreciate that U Calgary does go out of its way to acknowledge where we are and that the Canadian land that we're on didn't always belong to us.
Wasn't always Canadian. Yeah.
Wasn't acquired in the most legal of ways sometimes.
Oopsies.
Yeah. But yeah. Right. You were gonna talk about Victoria too.
We're going to talk about Victoria 2.
Please talk about Victoria too.
Victoria 2 is a good game, is what I want to say first. And, furthermore, Victoria 3 must be created, is my obligatory statement whenever I talk about Victoria 2. But
Victoria 2 features colonialism to such an extent that I don't think we could ever see it get made in a similar fashion again, which is probably why we haven't seen Victoria 3 by now, to be honest, because major parts of the game are the slave trade or suppressing cultures, or like you could perform genocides in the game.
Yeah.
And the game doesn't make a point of like making it a big separate thing. It's just like, oh, because the whole framework of Victoria 2 is like framed around everywhere in all of the places in the world will have pops, is what they call their little population things, and it'll say this person is these are liberal pops, these are Yankee pops if they're like from the north of the U.S., or Dixie pops if they're from the south. That's how they differentiate for the Civil War. Or these are British pops, these are Irish pops, these are Indian pops, these are etc. and so on and so on. And these also have religions associated with them and this kind of thing. And you just will have at the start of the game, as the U.S. for example, you'll just have a lot of African American pops, all slave class in the South, and that's just how it is. And you can work as a goal to either free them, or like if you so choose, like to enslave more, or as the North, you can embrace slavery or ban it entirely. And it's a thing that you can do in a lot of these places. And the way that it handles it is so matter of fact that as I was saying, I think it would be far too volatile to be released today again. Just because it doesn't make a big deal of it. It just says like, oh, you can move these pops around or whatever, which is like, forced moving these people around, because you did the same thing with Native American tribes. They're not shown to the same extent in this. I think that's partially due to the fact that by this point the populations were so thoroughly decimated by disease and other forms of genocide that it's kind of shown in like they're not shown in the same way in most areas. In some areas, they're shown, I think, individually, but not as much.
Mm-hmm.
And that is one criticism I would have of Victoria 2, is that doesn't do a very good justice to the Native American populations. But by the start point in 1836, there weren't really many Native American major populations left at that point. There's ways that the U.S. can have deals with them, but there's nothing major there. But what I'm saying is, like, overall, the game will model slavery in the U.S. and that sort of thing, and ethnic cleansing in a lot of places. You see it in like Asia. I think that there's like options for the Turks to do that to the Armenians and the Kurds. It just is in the game, just is.
Yeah.
And I think that it's such like a bold way to approach it that, personally speaking, and I may catch flack for this one, I don't have too much of a problem with it, just because it just says exactly what's going on. It doesn't sugarcoat it at all.
Mm-hmm.
And also at the same thinking, Victoria 2 hasn't been grabbed by any Nazi movements like Hearts of Iron has or whatever.
Oh, no, they're there. They're there.
Well, not to the same extent in any case. They're
no, not to the same
there.
extent. It's an older game and a rougher game, but there's plenty of I've come across plenty of Victoria 2 discussions which have they're like, I just ethnically cleansed this and now the world is great. Like it's there. It gives people the options just like Hearts of Iron does. Only it actually has the mechanics for genocide.
Yeah, and Hearts of Iron doesn't model that. It just
ignores it.
Yeah. It's a little bit grayer, but I mean, we've talked about that before.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, in this game, you can just do it. Just is. And I don't know how else to put it.
I think that's good? Question mark?
I mean, I think it's good because it's not super empowering to a player. Like if you want to play as like I am Aryan Superman, Ubermensch or whatever, like, I mean, you can, but you'll screw yourself over big time if you do. Because you will be killing off all of these populations or whatever, and you need populations to work.
Yeah.
Like, so you can do it, but you're going to face the consequences for it. You can participate in slavery, and you will see both the pros and cons to it. Like, that population of the slaves won't like you, and as the world is going through a lot of revolutions in this point in time, because a big thing in the game is like, people becoming more radical and communist and that sort of thing, or anarchist. They're not gonna like you, and I've seen, like, in game, like, people get invaded because they still have slaves. Like, it happens, and so like it's good because it addresses these things directly, and also you have to be willing to face the consequences for doing X shitty thing.
Yeah, I think I like that the game exists and that it does show these kinds of things, because it's something like if you're coming into this and you don't know much about this period, understanding first that this is a game made by people and people have their own implicit biases and understandings of the world, and they select information that's going to be participating in the game themselves, knowing that this still does show you this world that works this way, and it kind of throws the whole canvas open and says, right, this is how it is. Here you get to step into this and see this world in action for a while. And it does have all the, like you said, all the ups and downs of these 19th century colonialists, the repercussions in these places that have been colonized, and the effects of, the scramble for Africa, because the game leads up to and then gets into that, and then you deal with some of the beginnings of the aftermath of that stuff, right? So I appreciate that stuff is all there because it lets people actually see this. Like it makes it real if it wasn't real to you before.
Right? Yeah, and that's what I like about it so much, is that it's specifically not sensitive to these things. It just has it as a fact, and I think that I don't think we could see Victoria 3, as I've mentioned, because people are more sensitive to these kinds of things. And I don't know how to say this without sounding now like an anti-SJW, but if you're going to have media of this point in time, you do have to acknowledge it, but it's a difficult thing to acknowledge.
Yeah, and I think that's the difficulty is the problem that we're facing nowadays. And I don't like, man, you're like the most liberal person I know, and I'm trying to be right there with you. And I don't think that you're being anti-liberal by suggesting that these kinds of things existing, this kind of media that acknowledges these horrible things, is a good thing. That you can sit down and play Victoria 2 and see this stuff. That's good. what I think needs to be done, even Victoria 2 just staying Victoria 2, and I agree we're not going to see Victoria 3 because of, well, no company wants to touch that with 10 foot full, is looking at how they built that game, and not just the mechanics, but when those developers sat down to put that game together, what research did they do? What books, what archives, what censuses, what information built that game for them?
Well, yeah.
Because that would be really
Notably,
fascinating.
actually, on a similar note, people are speculating one of the reasons that they can't make Victoria 3, and I'm not sure the absolute truth of this statement, but apparently the original team that built the population and economy models for the game, which are very important to being able to like play the whole game, the way that they built that information has been lost. Like the people who built it don't work there anymore,
Oh,
so they don't know how to replicate it.
oh
Is
man.
one of the thinkings.
Well, that's fascinating because that leads into some of the interesting parts about coding, right? About how this stuff, this science is kind of an art form in its own way. So yeah, that's something to do with it, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot to be said for lack of institutional knowledge over time. If you don't work on things, then people are just going to forget. Famously, like how we don't know how to make like the Greek fire bottles or whatever anymore, or like the Roman concrete because they just stopped building it and they didn't bother writing it down because it was just an institutional thing that everyone learned. And when they stopped doing it, it's just gone. Same thing with this coding is, if they're not constantly doing it, if they don't have people constantly doing it, that information is going to get passed down to someone. If someone wants to pick it up 15 years later, it's not there.
Hmm. But talking about Victoria 2, and then we can extrapolate to European Universalis 4, which is a lot more playable and still has, all the colonialism in it
Oh, definitely.
because it starts you off with the age of discovery, right, where your Europeans are going off and colonizing the world and all this. That too can be useful, but I feel like it does a worse job of it than Victoria 2.
Yeah, it does dumb it down a little bit. And I think specifically what it is that first of all, the only places that because every province will have a trade item, and you have things like cloth, you have gold in some places, which is important in like the New World and everything. But in some provinces, the trade good is slaves, so you don't have an option of not partaking in it. I don't think you can ban slavery in the game other than just not going to one of those nodes and using it. Um, but they don't have the same population system. They don't really show it as a big separate thing like they did in Victoria 2.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing. I will say they do address the Native American cultures much better in this because they're kind of their own unique playable things rather than in Victoria 2 that is just somewhat occupied land.
Yeah. I mean, I do appreciate that they've gone through and tried to make states in Africa, states in America, states in Asia fleshed out and playable with their own. They did research on them. They have their own tech trees and whatever. I appreciate that, but I do think we need to bring up the fact that you still have that like uncolonized land,
Mm-hmm.
which is just like a space where you send someone a colonizer and they sit there for a while and then it picks up a box and then it switches to your color, right?
Yeah.
And the people there are given no agency at all, right? They're barely a
Yeah.
number,
Well,
right?
there's ones that are playable. There are ones that are actual like I don't want to say states because that's not really accurate to the period, but they're like actual tribes or whatever. And then there's ones
Yeah.
that are just unincorporated peoples, I guess. Um, I don't know. And it's weird how you
Hmm.
can go about doing it because there's a mode where you can go on like uh tribal trade or whatever, and there on this one mode you can send your settler over where they can like either be like really antagonistic and fight the local people out, in which case they'll rise up more, um but you can take it over faster, as opposed to this other one which guarantees no uprisings ever because your people are like coexisting with the native people that live in that unoccupied square. And that's what I always did because it made me
Uh-huh.
feel the least shitty about it, but at the same time,
Yeah, coexisting until you reach 99 and then 100%, and then
yeah,
pop, it's
and then
yours.
look, I've built all of these towns and everything. This is my square now.
You're welcome,
This is my
locals.
square now. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, like, I suppose my problems with EU4, like I appreciate that they did do that, where they went through and made a lot of these, and they do present them as states. Like that's just the mechanic of the way the game does it, right? And that's not right, like you said. That's the game, I think, coming through and not doing this justice.
Right.
But the fact that they kind of simplify all of these colonial interactions into, are you going to be nice? Are you going to be a dick? And then the people have two modes, passively sitting there or attacking you, right? And there's very little of that interaction. And I know the game is Europa Universalis and it's about Europe from a European point of view. And you can like randomize a new world or America, and then that just completely does whatever to the people there because
Well, now they're not real.
Explore. Yeah. Um, but because of the game's systems too, it does push this very like aggressive expansionist kind of gameplay, right?
Mhm.
Like it's encouraging you to become a big blob state to protect yourself from other states because that's like how the game
Right.
works, right? And that in turn encourages you to go and colonize because you get all these resources. And I mean, in one case, that's kind of what's going on, and the other case, it's just simplifying things in this very aggressive, kill or be killed kind of version of colonialism, which I don't know if it's presenting it with enough nuance.
Yeah.
And maybe that's actually asking too much for a strategy game that tries to cover 400 years. And I mean, it fails in a bunch of other places too. Like, it can't really do revolutionary states well. It can't really do Napoleonic armies well. Like, it stumbles here and there.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's better or worse that it stumbles in
I
this
will
colonialism.
say, I'll say this for EU4. It tries more than a lot of other people do.
Yes, and we have to be. You're right. You have to be conscious of that, and we have to be happy that certain games, certain companies are trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, because I've seen recent things like Paradox, the people behind EU4, are now updating it to include like better depictions of the Aboriginal peoples in like Australia and Southeast Asia, and that's great. Like they're
Yes,
they're
yes, it
putting a
is.
lot of effort into like trying to do the best they can with this, and that's good. I don't have anything to
Yeah,
follow up with. Like good thing that they're doing that basically.
no, you're right. Because like, I may have been too
I don't
harsh.
think we're being
I
too
might be
harsh. I
being
think
too
it is
harsh with them
important to
because
point out these things because even though they're doing the best out of any game that's covered this stuff, I would say that doesn't mean that there's not stuff to criticize there.
yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm happy to hear that they're looking at Australia. I'm happy they're doing that stuff. I wonder if it's just more about the box they've put themselves in by nature of the systems that the game has. Like, because when you started, like, I remember when the game launched, a lot of non-European states were barely functional,
Yeah.
right? And then they've patched it in with their updates, and that's part of their whole thing. But the game still has an underlying code, which still has underlying systems, which is still how the game has to form the world. I suppose that this leads to another question about people are learning from these games, right? But it means they're learning that gamified specific dev team's version of what's going
Right.
on.
I actually saw the other day, I followed the Paradox Twitter, and they posted an image of some university is apparently using EU4 as a teaching tool, which is interesting and I would say good overall because it makes it interactive, but at the same time, you got to address the parts where it gamifies things. Like you can just
So
with your Monarch bucks or mana, you can just spam click it a bunch and then suddenly your place is very developed. Like that's not how things work.
yeah, I mean, I've known it to be used in historical classes as a let's look at this way of presenting history. So I've seen courses and course outlines about like games as history, as a way of taking history and a way of looking at history, and EU4 and Civ and those kinds of games are part of this. Like Civilization are part of this as how we are gamifying history, not so much as here's this game, play it to learn what happened. It's let's look at how this game is presenting this history to us. So in that sense, I'm very happy to see that happening because I think games are as valuable as film and TV
Oh, definitely.
for historical
Especially when
education.
they're like taken with the grain of salt, like this is a game, and so it's going to gamify things. And we didn't even mention Civ.
Yeah,
We completely forgot to
right.
mention Civ.
Civ has a very interesting relationship with
It's a very
colonialism.
bad relationship with colonialism. Just from the most recent game alone, I'm going to address this because Civ 6 is the one that came out just now. Um,
Yeah,
they
made they made Native American tribes into civilizations in the game, which are your player states. You can go around and you just 4x conquer everything. And
Mm-hmm.
I know in real life that pissed actually a lot of like tribes off, because they were like, we didn't this goes against the whole ethos and meaning of our tribe. We specifically don't do that, but it goes in direct conflict with what Civ is, which is it's a 4X game. You explore, expand, something, exterminate. Yeah,
Exploit, yeah.
and like having Native American factions in a 4X game specifically kind of goes against the whole point of it, because that was the argument there. It's like that kind of goes directly against their ethos.
See, Civ is so weird to me because the history of these, civilizations, air quotes, that they're bringing to the game is so detached from the history you're creating with these civs in this game, right? That it almost feels so silly. Like,
I mean, the Civ is very
because
silly,
yes,
but it doesn't.
yeah, like of course the tribes aren't going to
Yeah.
want to do this, but if you're playing them where you start off and they become a giant empire and then colonize the world, that's what happened in your game, right? Like that they wouldn't do that is irrelevant because the world that the game is playing or portraying is one in which that tribe didn't develop that way. It developed into whatever weird abomination of civs
Well, I
you
mean, like
get.
each Civ is basically the same thing. They just have a couple different modifiers that make them different from each other. So it's basically like you're playing as one base Civ with a few skins slapped on it, and that is what the Native
Yeah.
American factions are in this to a degree. I mean,
Mhm.
like the Inca, you could definitely say like, okay, that yeah, you can play that as a 4X Civ, or like the Aztecs, you can play that as a 4X Civ because they were a big empire. But for
Mhm.
someone like the Cree, I think is one of the tribes that had issue with this. I apologize if that's not correct, but I think it was the Cree. Um, it doesn't make as much sense in that case, and far be it from me, a white man, to say like you shouldn't be offended by this in this case. But it certainly does have a different air to it, I would say, than something like, to loop it back around, Age of Empires, where it's shown much more intimately. Whereas Civ, it's like a very
Mhm.
zoomed out view of the whole thing.
Like I would almost feel better about a Civ game where they didn't tie it to real lived peoples and places. Where it's just like, I don't know, you're Civ A, name yourself, and then it auto generates things. But I guess that has some problems too. But my point is the fact that yeah, they're right to feel misrepresented, but then so is everything in Civ because it's all just a big smattering of bullshit.
Yeah, I don't know. Civ is kind
Like,
of an equal opportunity offender.
yeah, because like if you look at even America, led by Teddy Roosevelt, which has its special power is it's cheaper to buy vacant land tiles. I mean, God.
Yeah, it
That's
it
atrocious.
it glosses over so much. And if we wanted to look at Civ from this angle, we could be here like literally all day. But
Yeah.
we will talk more about Civ, I suppose, when we do our inevitable imperialism episode, which was going to be different. We already have just in the talking about this episode, we already have like a modern imperialism in wargaming, and then an imperialism episode planned out. So we've already planned a lot out from just talking about this episode alone. But I mean,
Yeah.
there's
But
a
like,
lot going on there, and I am definitely not going to say like to someone who feels that they're people who have been oppressed by like media in general, or misrepresented by media in general, like, oh, don't worry about it too much in this. However, Civ in this case is, I don't know. I
no,
I, I
you're
think I
definitely
think
right.
Civ
Like,
I think Civ should like listen to people and like not include them if they're like, we're the we are these people. We say that it doesn't make sense for you to do this with us. I think that that's
because
fair in this case, but I don't know.
I agree with you that they have every right to be upset about it and every right to vocalize that. But I don't know if I like the idea of allowing a selection of people of a group say no, you can't include this because our no, like it's the history of the world is the history of the world, right? You
Sure.
can talk about it, but my crusade is that you need to do it correctly. And if the problem is that they're not doing it correctly, then that needs to be
Yeah, I
addressed.
think the thing is with like the Civ model though is that it just wouldn't make sense to do it otherwise.
Right, and that's the problem with Civ that we're getting at, is that Civ is, or that I'm trying to get at, is that Civ is so fucked as a historical model that it shouldn't be even considered that.
Yeah.
That, like, because you're right, you can be offended by this because it's incorrect, but also there is nothing that anything in Civ can do that can fix that, because of how fucked up Civ is as a model for history and civilizations in the world. That, but I don't think it should mean you shouldn't look at it. Like, I think it's more representation of Civ is better.
Yo, Sid Meier,
Than
if you're
not.
out there listening to this episode, what's up, man?
Yeah, let's talk, Sid. I read your book. I liked it. The autobiography
I
was
would
really
love
good.
to be on the team for Sid's Civ 7.
All right, okay. Here's my big problem with Civ 6. You ready? This
Go
is
ahead.
my big one. Sean Bean. I like Sean Bean a lot. In the Japan Civ, in the beginning of every Civ,
Mhm.
he spells out, he like talks about the Civ, right?
Okay,
He mispronounced Hojo Tokamune's name. How do you
get
do
him.
that?
Get him.
How
Get him,
how
Joe.
did that get through into the main game?
Okay, well, like, I think you're being a little uncharitable to Boromir here. No one ever taught him how to speak in Earth languages.
Why didn't they? I'm not saying it's his fault.
Yeah.
I'm saying it's Civ's fault. Why didn't someone say, "Sorry, Mr. Bean, it's Tokamune,
Mr.
not
Bean.
Tokamoon"?
Would have a different air if Rowan Atkinson did the intro
right.
thing for each section.
I would do. Also, I'm not happy with their quotes. There, that's my gamer rant. The quotes are bullshit, and the fact that no one corrected Tokamune bothers me. Also, right, I'm on a tirade now.
Go ahead.
Way back when the game was releasing, they had interviews with the devs, and they were showing off the Brazilian Civ. Which, again, okay, so another aside to an aside to an aside. Isn't it nice, good that they're including these, air quote civs that have just been ignored by these kind of 4X games forever? Like Brazil's a civ, Ethiopia's a civ, like all these places that just been shunted because they're not these, world conquering Roman Empire or whatever. Now they get to have, like, people get to play as themselves in these games. Like,
They
isn't
included
that a
Grand
good thing?
Colombia, and that's fun.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah, right. They're talking about Brazil, and one of the devs said, "Sorry, I don't speak Spanish, so I'm not going to say this right." Get your shit together,
oh, no.
people. They published that as a video to promote their game. Not cool, guys.
Oh no.
Tokemune.
All right, you know what? We're gonna cancel Civ. I've decided. This is my SJW bent. Yes, I am here. I am the evil Twitter leftists or whatever. I am here to cancel Civ 6.
I mean, like, I still play Civ.
So do I.
still play Civ 6. I want it to be better, and also I don't know if it'll ever become a good vehicle for history, because it's built upon stereotypes. Like, everything is built upon
Civ
stereotypes.
is probably the worst possible way you could learn history.
Yeah, like, every Civ is just built on lowest common denominator stereotypes of the people, and that's just not how humans work, and that's
I
not
want
how
to point out
countries
it is a
work, and that's not-
positive stereotype of the people, but it's always a stereotype.
mostly, yeah.
I can't think of a negative stereotype that comes with these Civs at all.
I don't know. American Manifest Destiny being buying free tiles.
I mean,
seems kinda shitty.
if you ignore what conceptually buying free tiles is in real life, then yeah, it's fine. Because like in the game, there is no one there. That's the whole thing. Is like the only
Yeah.
bad people, like the only people who aren't in Civ are barbarians, and even they're changing that now. You could like negotiate with barbarians and stuff in the upcoming thing, which is cool.
Yeah, I do
But,
appreciate that.
like
Yeah.
in Civ now, it's just these barbarians will come and attack you, and then you beat them up. Like, that's just not how things work. But like, it's Civ. You're colonizing literally empty land. There's literally no one there in these cases. It's fine.
Yeah. I mean, now I'm trying to think back about different civs, and I think the only one that off the top of my head, and I'm sure if I go digging or if someone wants to tell me, because he said that the Cree people are upset about this, and they have every right to be. And I'm sure there's other people out there who have issues. Congo, isn't Congo's ability or their thing that the leader wants to just spread religion to them?
Yes,
because
it was a
he
religious melting pot.
converted
I
to
think at the
Christianity.
time was the idea.
Well, yeah, I thought there's a lot more to the empire, or the kingdom of the Congo, that this massive geopolitical structure than the guy was taken to Portugal and became Christian.
Yeah, probably
You know?
forced to. I apologize
So
for
there's-
any
there's-
Congo fans who might know differently.
Well, correct us
Yeah,
if we're
correct me
wrong.
if I'm wrong. However,
I'm not
don't correct me on
not
this
really
next
indulgent
statement.
on
I
this.
hate it whenever Congo shows up in my Civ game because they always are dicks to me for no reason. I don't know why. Every time
Everyone
I
has one.
see Congo show up, I'm like, oh god, this is gonna be the day, isn't it? And they always just show up and then colonize land I want to take, and then they're just like send those shitty little messages to me like, oh, you looks like you have a tiny treasury and your military is small and you're ugly, and I'm like, why? They always do that, and then they try
Uh,
to send missionaries to make me a different religion, and I'm like, get out of here, Congo. And so I don't like
'Cause
Congo
that's
in Civ 6. It's not for any problematic reasons. I just think that the leader's a dick.
and it's funny because I think if you ask anybody who plays Civ, they'll all have that Civ. For me, it's Russia and Peter, because he's in every one of my freaking
It's always
games,
Congo
and
for
he
me.
always shows up and he's always like, "Oh, hey, so you're not being very scientific, are you?"
I've learned to dread the theme of Congo whenever I hear it. I'm like, oh god, they're here.
So I mean, that's the fun part of Civ, is that they've made this weird little bastardized kids book version of history where we can have fun with these like Ken doll versions of historical figures, but it's just so
I like that as a
wrong.
description. Ken doll history.
Because I mean, yeah, you got these like, I feel like you could squeeze Chandragupta and he'd go like, like a squeeze doll. Like they're very
You
Play-Doh
couldn't
looking to
squeeze
me.
Gilgamesh. He would squeeze you.
Yeah, Gilgamesh is definitely
Gilgamesh
the
could
squeezer.
bench press you. Gilgamesh could literally rip me in half.
And like, I'm glad that Civ is going and they're adding real female leaders to a lot of different Civs. They're expanding away from the European Civs as like the only thing that matters. So we get a lot more broad, descriptors from all over the planet. I like
But
that.
at the same time, it's
I mean,
a very shallow look at many of these places.
of course, yes. So like, it is. There's the pros and cons, right? Because like I've said, it's an atrocious way of learning history, and it's this ridiculous stereotype fueled hodgepodge of
And it's like,
crap.
so you're telling me that the Maori people could just get on canoes and then sail to England and settle there if they wanted to? And it's like, I
Sure, why not?
guess.
Just watch out that you step over all those Canadian hockey rinks, because that's all we're fucking known for.
Which is incredibly funny. Which is incredibly
But see,
funny. I'm so pleased.
that's the point of the
I'm
game.
so
Like, how
yeah.
grumpy can
I
you be
will
at it?
say that some of the stereotypes please me to no end because it just stereotypes in such a funny way. Like with the Canadian hockey rink thing, saw that and I was like, "Are you kidding?" Like,
Yeah, I mean, and like I'm pretty sure the Russian theme is just the Rasputin song from the
are,
70s.
I'm gonna have to go listen to that after this. I have to.
I'm pretty sure
I
it is.
don't think that's accurate, but I will get back to you.
You gotta go check.
The Australian theme is Waltzing Matilda, and I do love that.
So yeah, I mean, is this new candy coated version of Civ better than when they were trying to be more serious in the old days and were probably more problematic with how they did things?
I kind of like the direction they've gone in. I have problems with it, but I like it at the same time.
Yeah, I think I'm in there too, because I think I play more Civ 6 than I have done the other ones now. I played a lot of 5, I played a lot of 3, and a lot of 2 when I was a wee lad with my parents' Windows 98 and Civ 2.
Civ 3 was my big one.
But
Played a lot of Civ 3.
yeah, I don't know. It's I mean, doesn't what's Japan's thing? Don't they get like a
They get a
Oh,
bonus
yeah.
for putting things on the coast, but it became really funny in the one expansion where they released climate change. So if you saw Japan existing, you could just purposely cause climate change as much as possible to like mess with them and just drown all of their
but
stuff.
yeah, they're don't they not get hurt by hurricanes because of divine
Yeah.
wind? Yeah, but come
It's
on,
incredibly
guys.
funny.
It's so bad. Right. So I mean, I think the final word on Civ 6 for us is that it's so bonkers that it doesn't fit in the same realm of these games that actually address a real historical issue of colonialism and then do it poorly and or fail to acknowledge it. Although the 4X structure as a whole is overtly colonialist, right?
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. There's an in between ignoring it and doing it right, I guess. And maybe Civ falls into that in between.
Yeah, it's just Civ.
It's just Civ.
I think that's a good point for us to end on. It's just Civ.
It's
Yeah.
just Civ. Gotta go play as Vietnam now. See what they're up to.
Closing thoughts on this. Colonialism is bad, but it's important that you remember that it's bad. So games should remind you that it is bad if it gives you the option to do it.
Yeah, just don't hide it. And don't try and scrub away something that's overtly colonialist because it's not nice to deal with
Yeah.
it anymore.
And we haven't seen any cases of this recently, but I'm going to pre-say this for inevitably when this is going to come out, and then like the next week is going to be like, oh yeah, like Plantation Simulator or whatever. I explicitly don't want games to glorify it either, because
No, God, no. I hope that's not what comes out of this.
I don't know of
hour-long
anything that
discussion.
exists like that. I mean, like, obviously we had things during the Clean Wehrmacht episode that we were directly addressing. I don't know anything in the opposite direction that is like, colonialism was good, actually. I mean, I did hear about, slight tangent, I did hear about a book recently that was like, Three Cheers for the British Empire, the best thing in the world.
Ooh, rough.
Yeah, it was like, oh yeah, I think I might have mentioned this to you before, but it was like, it's some guy that is like featured on PragerU a lot. That was like, oh yeah, love the British Empire. It brought freedom, and it's like, oh. So that's the exact opposite end of the spectrum. And if you see anything like that, don't give them their money. Don't give them your money. Like, like if you're gonna enjoy their products, don't enjoy their products.
Also, PragerU is not a university. Just
we should do a PragerU episode. Just attack them specifically.
Let's used to talk about Wargames. Now we just talk
how
about
much we fucking hate PragerU. I mean, a good old other Joe at the Land's End by Donkeys does bonus episodes where he specifically will take apart military history parts of their thing and then go after them. We can just do that with
good, because they need going after. Yeah. And apologies to anyone who was looking for more specifically wargaming content, but this all counts as games that cover war, so I mean it's close enough to me.
A lot of this is pretty close. Imperial Struggle is a war game to an extent.
Yeah.
EU4 is kind of a war. Grand Strategy is on the periphery of war games. Don't add us. We know.
4X games. And
if someone comes at me with the well, actually, I'm going to respond with a very mocking image. So like. Don't come at me with the will actuallys. We know.
Have that queued up.
Okay.
Just gonna find one from Civ 6 of one of those people being silly looking.
I'm gonna just post the leader of Congo at you.
See, comment below who is your Civ that you absolutely hate.
That's what I want to hear.
Really great in that.
In whichever Civ game is your favorite, but specifically 6 if you have it.
Who's the one that just ruins your freaking day? Peter. Go home.
Okay. Well, I think this is a good place to stop. I think that
I think so.
We have things that we need to do. So I don't know. Do we have any? Oh yeah. Since the last time we recorded an episode, I was on an episode of Lions Led by Donkeys, the podcast I just mentioned. It was episode I think 141. It's about the Polish mailmen who started World War II, kind of. Go listen to it. It's a good time. Yeah, it's a right fun little romp. I don't know. I don't have anything else.
And you guys actually mentioned a war game, right? You guys actually mentioned a war game.
We did. There is a war game. It's called Soldiers in Postmen's Uniforms. It is a solo game, designed as a solo game where you basically play as these Polish postal workers who are attacked by Nazi cops in Danzig. And so the point is, you play as the Polish mailmen fighting the Nazi cops, which is
by the excellent David
Topman. Which as I said is one of the worst kind of cops for Nazis. I don't remember what I said specifically. Whatever. Don't be a Nazi. Don't be a Nazi cop.
No, don't be a Nazi. Don't be a colonialist. Just come hang out with us on Discord.
Yes, we have a Discord. We'll also post the link up in the various things. But come hang out. We do games where we just hang out every so often. I know there's other games we probably want to try to get into more. Like Squad has an update recently that people are getting into. We'll probably play some Squad or other things. We did a crossover event with the Lands Led by Donkeys server a few weeks ago of War of Rights, which is the Civil War shooter game, which was a fun experience. I think we have some of that clip, so we might put up a video of that at some point.
Yeah, I still got to edit that. I've been looking at it, but it needs work. But it's gonna come.
To be frank, there's a lot of boring moments in War of Rights, but
just need some love and care. But yeah, we talk about board games, like tabletop war games, and digital war games on the blog and on the Discord, and we're always welcoming people to come and chat with us about things or show off their models or
unless you were trying to actually us.
I mean, you can come do that. It'll be funny. We got a lot of monkey gifts.
Return to monkey. We've been playing a lot of the Ancestors. Humankind Odyssey. We're playing the monkey game right now. That's what we're doing in our spare time. Okay. Well, I have to go write a review. You have to go pick up your wife.
Mm-hmm.
And I also have to let the people in my basement talk again. So I think we'll sign off here. Is there anything else you
Thanks for
wanted
listening,
to
guys.
plug at the last second?
Nope, just to appreciate everyone tuning in to listen to us talk and ramble on
Yeah.
about these things, and always appreciate people wanting to get involved in the conversation. Anywhere really, just get in touch with us. We generally like to talk to you guys about these things and about our opinions or about how you feel about what's going on. So yeah,
Yeah.
reach out.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. And good night. And Godspeed. Goodbye.